Hello, tech enthusiasts. This is Brian from Blackburn in Tech. So, one of the things that a good network engineer or even a network ninja would need to know is how to do IP subnetting. Now, it's not as crazy as a lot of people make it out to be, so before you run to the hills, let's just take a step back. Essentially, if you can slice a pizza, you can probably slice a network. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through on how to be able to do that. Maybe not so much on the pizza part, but I can definitely help you out on the network side. So stay tuned and we'll get this party started.
Oh, it's Blackburn in Tech, we're leveling up. From networking paths to systems we trust. Let's break it down, let's build it back. Together we're learning, right on track.
All right, welcome back. All right, let's go ahead and start with the basics. So first of all, what is subnetting? Let's imagine that you have a giant pizza and you want to share it with your friends, but you want to each friend get a certain number of slices, right? Subnetting is basically dividing a big network into more manageable pieces, just like cutting it into a pizza. Each slice, a subnet, for example, and it helps direct traffic and efficiency on your network so that things just don't get, well, overall messy. So where is my data? No one wants their data just wandering around like a lost tourist without a map. Subnetting ensures that it doesn't happen, and by breaking up the networks and keeping everything in its own lane. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the fun part and figure out how do we actually do this. All right, so let's look at this example. So 192.168.1.0/24 is a classic network that you see pretty much everywhere, right? So what this actually means, let's go ahead and break it down. So the /24 is more your guide that tells you this is how many bits we're going to use for the network address part of this. And then the rest of it will be your host bits. So in this example, 24 bits are used for the network out of the 32 bits. All IPv4 addressing uses a 32-bit schema. All right, so this is one thing that everybody needs to know is that when you look at the subnet masks on a computer, it's always going to request it for you. So essentially what it is it tells the computer what is the network and what's the host portion for it to use. So like at this /24 example, it's really nice, 255.255.255.0. And the reason why you have that /24 is because it makes it so much easier just to say a /24 than all that. But the more you slice it up, the more that last number or wherever you're doing your subnetting at will change. So when you're converting them to binary, it's kind of interesting because you can only have one continuous ones. You'll never see continuous ones, a 0 and a 1. And most people kind of throw that one for a loop, but we'll get into that one a little bit more. But so like, for example, we do a /25, which we'll cover that one here in a little bit. So that subnet mask will be a /25, but that'll be 255.255.255/128. And so when you go to put that in the computer, that's how it knows what the subnet is and what network is its local network, or whether it needs to go out to your router to go to the next level of communication. All right, so let's go ahead and slice it up a little bit more. So we'll use the same example that we used before in that 192.168.1 network. So we're going to move it from that 24-bit up to a 25-bit. So essentially what we're doing, if you look down here at the bottom, let me pull up my little cursor thing. We're moving this over to the network bit, but we're removing one of these bits from the host side. So instead of having that additional bit, we're going to move it over here to the network side. That's how we get the 25 bits. And then we'll have 7 host bits. And so when we do the math, and I'll show you how to do the math on this, is actually very easy. That's how you get that 128 hosts. So then, of course, we still got a -2 of those IP addresses because you got a network ID and a broadcast IP. We need to always make sure we do that. We always need to make sure we minus those two. That's the most common flaw that most people do whenever they're subnetting is they forget that part. They get into the whole doing this and then you forget that and you're like, oh, yeah, that's why my numbers don't match up. So you're going down. So instead of adding one, we're taking a host bit and put it on the network side. For me personally, it's easier to draw it out and write it out like this whenever I'm trying to do this. It makes it a little bit easier. And I'll show you guys the math coming up next. All right, so before we get into this, Have you ever wondered why IP addresses only go up to 255 per octet? So, you know, you have 4 octets, so like 192.168.0.1, but those only go up to 255. That's because this power is a 2 here. And you have 8 bits per chunk. That's not the technical name of it, but that's what I call it. Each little chunk has 8 bits in it. So if you know your power is a 2, you can write out a little gram or a little diagram like this. Like personally, this is what I do whenever I'm doing subnetting, especially when I was using it for some certifications. I'd write this out at the top of the little dry erase thing. And so, like I said, there's 8 bits that's in each octet. So if you want to change something, then it's actually fairly simple. So let's just say I want to know what my 192.168.1, and I'm curious, how do I write 19 in binary, for example? So if we go ahead and just look at our example here, the highest number without going over, so 128, too big. 64, too big. 32, too big. 16, I'm going to write 1 down. Okay, so there I can use that 16, right? Yep. And then 8, if I add 8 to that, that will be too big. So that will be a 0. That 4, that will be a 0, because that will throw me over as well. Same for the 2, I can use the 2, so I'll write a 1. And then that 1, I need that 1 to total it out. So essentially, it would still be, let me clear my chicken scratch off the screen here. And then, yeah, there we go. I gotta hit the right buttons. I swear I know what I'm doing some days. So this is a 0. This is a 0, right? And then my 32 is still a 0 because that's way too big. 16, I can use that 16, but if I add 8 to it, then that makes me go over, so I don't want to do that one. And then if I look down at it, I can't use the 4, can I? So if I'm 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, so that makes me go over, right? So no, I can't use that one, but I can use this one, 1 and 1. So we just literally wrote out some binary right there, and it's the exact same process of putting it back. If you was curious, if someone wrote out some binary right in front of you, like what's this image right here, like this image down here, and you're going, hey, I can do this, write this little chart down and just put the numbers right below it and then add it together. So for example, for me, I would still do the same concept, or I would do the, okay, 2 plus 1 is 3, and then 16, and then I add up, okay, so then add it to my 16, so then I know it's 19. That's personally, like I said, it's not as difficult as a lot of people make this part out to be. Converting numbers to binary is actually fairly simple. Like I said, as long as you know your power is a 2, this number does go larger. So in case you're wondering, this one does continuously go this way. But as far as network engineers, we're typically not worried about that. That's when you're getting more into the programming. Maybe they're a little more concerned about that. But as far as network engineers, we don't really worry about that as much. These are our golden numbers. And then remember, once you get your number, though, so if you're subnetting a subnet itself, always remember to mind those two. Like I said, that's probably the most common things that people screw up on. One of the instructors on CBT Nuggets that I used to watch, he was the one who actually taught this course, and I loved how he did this. So basically, he's like, write it out, practice with it, like try writing your phone number out in this format. Okay, well, if I know my number is 555-0123-4, for example, how do I turn that into a binary? But it's kind of fun, especially if you give someone your phone number in binary, they're really going to look at you like you're nuts. But hey, might as well have some fun with it. Like I said, I didn't create a script for this part, but I wanted to explain how to do the math behind it, because I've noticed that a lot of places and people don't really go into detail on how to do it. This is actually, like I said, it's very simple to do this part. Just write out your numbers, and remember, if it's going to be too big, you can't use it. And then you just add them together. All right, now that we got the big picture, let's go ahead and kind of look at this from the big picture. So we know that these are our network bits, and right here's our host bits that we currently have. And if we convert it back to decimal, this is what it would look like inside of a decimal environment. So practice on some of the subnetting, and it definitely takes a little bit of time, but as long as you remember to use the power of 2, and you write that out, it makes it so much easier. And each octet has 8 8 bits in it. So as long as you practice that, you should definitely be fine. And also, as a little side note, if you go on and just go on your favorite search engine and you look up subnet calculator, this is just one of them that I personally use, and then you put in the subnet that you want to use, it will give you, let me go ahead and zoom in to make it a little bit easier on this camera for you. So it will give you, okay, so here's our network address that we want. And it'll give me my usable range. So if you look at this, remember that 0 is going to be our network address, and 255 will be that last IP address. That's going to be my broadcast address. So that's why that was this. But if you come over here, you can actually look at the binary bits themselves. So if you didn't believe me, you can always come up here and look. Or if you want to double check your work, especially if you're just starting, it's definitely a good idea to go ahead and do some math on it and then check it and just see if your numbers match up with the calculator. And with that, you have it. So like I said, it's actually not that difficult as long as you know what the network subnet is, you know what the what IP address range you're using, and you can convert it back and forth. It's actually not that difficult. I would definitely recommend practicing it. Applies to, say, if you're a home lab person, someone who works in IT, setting up any type of networking. It's definitely good information to have, and I definitely recommend everyone to use it. So if you've enjoyed this video content, go ahead and hit that like button, smash the subscribe, as everybody says. Maybe hit that bell notification if you want more notifications of when we create great content for you. And as always, thank you, and we appreciate your time watching.